She has been very helpful in my class. But definitely missing qualitative insight. But it's been good. Sorry.
So you're one of
Good. You're fine. Yeah. You're okay though.
Oh, good to know. I didn't know that.
Let me know that the slideshow ended because I don't think you've seen it yet. Sorry.
A question. So the streaming link kicks open at 2:45.
It's right now.
It's what?
It's going right now.
Okay, because Chris Small can't access it.
Did he get
Or
the?
he's good at it.
Did he get the second email link?
I don't know. Do you want to
There was
send
a.
it to him?
I can't.
You can.
Stacy. If you just go to the college's YouTube channel, it should just be the link. It should just be the video right there happening right now.
Okay, let me see this.
Yeah, we had to send out that correction because the link to the first live stream was incorrect.
I'm Canada. I'm out. when you're done that, right? Yeah. That's kind of like family breaks. I can hold it all the time. So like,
I think so. I like
something else that like that again.
yeah, I would agree. Oh, yeah, I love that guy.
Good afternoon and welcome. It is with deep sadness that we gather here to celebrate the life of Danny Moraguez. He was a wonderful and cherished colleague, friend, teacher, and person. Danny was a contribution to every arena of his life. Today we come together with his family, who is here with us here, his advisor, colleagues, and students to recognize his deep contribution to everyone who had the luck to be in his sphere. We share his lifetime of service, as well as the joys that he shared with others, whether it was his Country 101 playlist, which, by the way, you can access this, right? Or the stickers that he had on his door, which we have radiate positivity for anyone who would like to leave and grab that. To his humor, sharp wit, and deep care. I want to thank everyone who is here, his family, his best friend, his advisor, Sarah Dexter, Dean Andrew, Associate Dean Park Gangan, Associate Dean Eklund, fellow colleagues here at FSU and beyond, students, friends, here and online. At this point, I turn to his educational leadership and policy cohort colleagues, Erica Harbatkin and Annie Wofford, who will serve as our MCs for this gathering.
Hi, thanks, Stacy. So I'm Erica, this is Annie. Annie and I started together in 2022 here at FSU as part of a cohort of brand new assistant professors. And the cohort included us and Walt Acton, who has since moved to Michigan, and whose flight got canceled, but was gonna be here today. And Neha Maglani, who moved to the Netherlands, and Kevin Forehand, who you're going to hear from later and is somewhere here. There he is. So we were all part of this cohort that we think of as kind of this just tiny little microcosm of this huge community of people that Danny created and built and fostered with his love. You're going to hear from a lot of people today who were kind of part of different parts of his life. One of the things that I was thinking about as we were putting together this program, and I say we as a very small part of that because there are a ton of people here who love Danny so much and who contributed so much to this program. But one of the things I was thinking about is we all know Danny in the same way, the same core of him, right? The things that Stacy already talked about, the caring and the generosity and the humor and kind of the core of who he is. But also in kind of listening to some of these stories, what I also saw is that Danny gave like each of us kind of his own little special gifts that were matched to who we were and what our relationships were and how we knew him and what we loved. So sometimes just even little things like, his being a Kansas City Chiefs fan for the people from Kansas City, or for the sports fans, or being a New Yorker for the kid of two New Yorkers, or being an elementary school teacher for my little girl who adored Danny and loved spending time with him, along with, I know, all of his nieces and nephews who grew up with that. So it sucks that we're here less than 2 weeks after Danny's 50th birthday, but I feel extraordinarily privileged to be here with you guys and hear these stories and hear these little gifts that Danny gave us, all these unique kind of pieces of him that we all got to experience in different ways. So you're going to hear from a lot of people who knew him in a lot of different ways. This is a more updated program from what you have in your laps here, because we have more people who wanted to share their memories after we printed those programs. But you're going to hear about Danny as, yes, a cohort mate and a friend, but as an advisee, as an advisor, as a teacher, as a student, as a colleague, as as a friend, as family, as someone who's very much both of those things. And I just think that we're also privileged to be here and be able to hear all of that and be part of that. So as we kind of move forward, Annie and I are going to kind of be your guides through all of this, with just the note that we know when we see ourselves as this tiny little piece of his big, beautiful community, you all, that he created. And we're going to try in the process to inject a little bit of levity into all this, because as we all know, Danny, no matter how heavy things got, no matter how dark things got, Danny was always the one to bring the light.
So Danny was a person of service, as all of you know, and he brought this to every realm of his life in many different ways. He really wanted to be in community with everyone that he was with, and he was always that person that was the most present in every conversation you had. And when you start a tenure track role, often in a good department like we have, you get a little bit of protection from too much service too early. They want you to focus on your research, to really enact the excellent education that you can provide in the classroom, maybe a committee here and there, maybe a little bit of mentorship. But that was not Danny. He was here for all of the people, and that included service. And I share that because there are a couple of mentorship programs here at FSU and with our neighbor institution, FAMU, that Danny quickly became very engaged in. And one of those here at FSU was the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program, UROP, to those familiar. And UROP is a program of first and second year undergraduate students that are really eager to get the opportunity to learn what research is. And who better to be a guide on that path to learning what research is than our friend and colleague, Danny Moraguez. What a gift these students had in working with him. And when the email came out for accepting applications to be a UROP mentor, when Erica and Danny and I were on our first year in the tenure track, we looked at that email and we were like, oh, maybe, what's this UROP program about? Maybe next year, I don't know. What do you think? And we started just messaging each other about it. And Danny answered the call. So this is the text that we had between our group in 2023. This UROP thing is wild. How many applicants have you gotten? I can't keep up with the interviews. And Danny responded, 9 applicants, accepted a bunch already. Having second thoughts, all gonna be crazy. Danny ended up accepting 6 UROP mentees, which is a lot for anyone. But when you are taking on mentorship in the way Danny wanted to, that involved a lot more than just average mentorship, right? He had PowerPoints for every mentee meeting. He had structured learning outcomes. He had, learning objectives for everyone. He had professional development for first and second year undergraduates, learning about what research was. And personally, I always knew that he was in the office with the UROP mentees when I heard a gigantic sneeze from the conference room.
Which is on the other side of that.
On the other side of the suite, you could hear Danny's sneezes and you knew he was there. And Erica had the pleasure of sitting next to his sneezing office for 2 years we were here.
So that was always like a good sign. Look, here Danny is, right? There's this like big sneeze echoing through the room. And it was also, even in that, it was a way he connected with people. Because when he would sneeze and I wasn't there, he would say, Erica, where are you? I just sneezed and I didn't even have you here to hear it. So everything Danny did was about building these connections. I think we can go to the next one. So this is a friend of Danny's, Steve Menzel, who sent in a video of us.
I've been fortunate enough to know Danny for the past 15 years or so. We met Hi, my name is Steve Menzel. I've been fortunate enough to know Danny for the past 15 years or so. We met here in New York. And I have him to thank for me liking country music and NASCAR. He was also the most selfless person I've ever met. I could give so many examples, but one of his favorites was him giving me money to bring back from Taiwan to the US so I could send it to his nephew who was starting college. He was so excited to give that money. And it was a meaningful chunk of his annual income, but he was so excited to do it. And he wasn't only selfless with finances, he was also so generous with kindness, support, humor, intelligence, and love. And the best laugh. The world is a so much better place with him having been in it. Thank you.
So Danny's selflessness and his giving nature did not only show up in the Europe program as a mentor, but it also showed up in another mentoring program that's a partnership between FSU and FAMU, the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University next door. And this is a program that centers on introducing late-stage undergraduates and early-stage master's students to education research with a social justice focus. So who better than Danny to be a mentor in this program when he cared so deeply about the next generation of scholars, of educators, and making sure that social justice was at the heart of everything we do. So to talk about Danny's contributions to the Purpose program, I want to introduce Betsy Stout-Phillip, friend and colleague of Danny's.
When I think of Danny Moraguez, I think of how he was comfortable and confident. He was at ease with who he was and being who he was with everyone that he was around. The first time I met him at a Purpose Fellowship event, I remember thinking, this is not just a new colleague, this could be a friend. And indeed he was. Purpose is an intensive training program, as Annie just said, for students who, with the help of a faculty mentor, conduct their first independent research study. It's a bit of a 0 to 60 experience. Faculty have a hard job in general, and Purpose is a pretty major add-on, not just a small thing. Danny invested fully in his service to his mentee, and he consistently went the extra mile by emailing me things that he said, oh, Joanne and I talked about this in our meeting, and you other people might find it helpful. Here, you can send this out. And I would. When I think of Danny, I think of equity. I cannot separate those two. We've inherited an unequal and an unfair world, and Danny wanted to develop leaders who could kindly, creatively, and strategically bring more fairness and justice. He wanted to help develop leaders who could build schools and communities where everyone can flourish. And we believe that legacy lives on. I think of how Danny was steady and strong in the face of shifting winds that are trying to kind of sideline his passion and his expertise. A year ago today, he spoke on a faculty panel for Purpose, and he told students that although his research was facing obstacles, good leadership is equitable leadership, and you can always pursue good leadership. I think of how seamlessly Danny integrated into the Purpose training space. Not just any faculty can sit and listen to students process their learning and find the right 2 moments to jump in and add his wisdom. Not every faculty is able to only jump in 2 times to add their wisdom, but he was amazing. I can think of one time where he spent an hour and a half with us, 2 contributions. One was a word of encouragement that he dropped in to someone specifically, but it applied to everyone. The second moment is when he jumped in to explain the in-depth iterative qualitative coding process in a clear and appealing way to emerging researchers. When I think of Danny, I think of commitment to community. As I was reading everything scrolling through while we were waiting to begin, if I were a qualitative researcher, you could go through and you could code that, right? Commitment to community was mentioned in almost every single thing that we saw there. In August, Danny showed up in a purpose seminar saying he'd been sick for a month, but he didn't want to miss being present with everyone, and so he had bought and carried with him the largest iced coffee that Dunkin' Donuts sells, and sat and took that time with us. His love for people and community prevails. Danny's purpose mentee, Joanne Nybaugh, is now a grad student in Boston, yet another student that he has sent on into graduate studies. Joanne couldn't be here, so I'm honored to read her reflection to you. Dr. Moraguez was my mentor in purpose. It was my first time doing research, and I had no idea what I was doing, but Danny made it feel possible. He was more than a mentor to me, he was a friend. I could go to him about anything. I brought him my questions, my doubts, my happy moments, and more. He believed in my voice and in my research. We spoke about big ideas from social justice to education. We spoke of joy. I remember a meeting where we spent the entire time talking about Bad Bunny's album, from the lyrical meaning to the beats used. It allowed us to know each other and our passions. My heart aches to know that he was not able to see that Super Bowl performance. I know he would have loved it. I am grateful for the time I had with him, even though it was short. His encouragement lives in my work, his laughter in my memories, and his belief in me moves me forward. We remember him.
I had the pleasure of meeting Danny when I was co-director of Jackson Scholars, and he was assigned to work with us as the GA. Danny was the best GA ever. He was dependable, he was loyal, he knew his job, and he took it personally, all the tasks that I had. He worked so hard, he wanted to make me look good, and he wanted to make me proud of the work that he was doing. And he succeeded at that. He did so well that when I became president of UCEA and I was charged with planning the conference, he was the first person that I chose to be a part of the conference planning committee. I knew with Danny on the committee that we would have a good, strong team. So as we planned, I got to know other sides of Danny because we spent so much time together. I got to see him work hard, but as we planned on the side of the conference and we had dinners together and just conversation, I got to see Danny laugh. I got to hear some of the stories. I got to learn of the vast experiences that he had had in the military, experience in working in China, all the things that he was so humble in his life that no one would ever know until you had taken the time to hear those conversations. I just appreciate Danny's demeanor and just how he had a way of making everyone feel good and important and loved and cared for. I will miss Danny, and I will miss all the things that he brought to the world. I am just beyond and over the moon for the fact that I got a chance to know Danny and get a chance to work with him in the ways that I did. Thank you all, and thank you, Danny, just for being such a good friend and colleague.
Betsy, and Dr. Lisa Bass is the former president of the University Council for Education Administration, as she mentioned, and she got to work closely with Danny when he was a graduate student at the University of Virginia, and to know how much he poured into that community is really special, because UCEA, that's his people, his professional home, and he continued to give to UCEA until the very end.
So this is a quote from a student, but I can't actually see it from here, so I'm gonna give you guys a second to read it on your own. So this was Danny. He was this very service-oriented person, this person who wanted to support people in every way that he knew how, in every way that he could. And so I remember, toward the end, and he was so sad to miss everything that he wanted to be part of, that he felt like was important. And one of the things he said in the email that he narrated was that he was so sorry to drop the ball on his research and on his service. And I was initially thinking, like, your service, like, who cares, Danny? Just focus on yourself, get better, right? But for Danny, it wasn't about the service, right? It was about the people. It was about the work that he genuinely believed would make the world a little bit of a better place than when he wasn't in it. And it was about all of you. And so for Danny, service was just like everything else in his life, about connection. And so before he came here and kind of lent his service to all of us in this field, as Lisa mentioned, he was in the military and he gave service to the country. He always described this as the greatest time of his life. And I never fully understood it until I heard from his friend Angel.
Hello, my name is Angel Acevedo. I was one of Daniel Moraguez's best friends. I served in the Marine Corps with them I served from 1994 to 98. I did meet Daniel back in 1995. I had just gotten back from Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and I met Daniel through another mutual friend of ours, and we hit it off right away. We did everything together. We would go to the mess hall to eat together. We would go out in town together. We go shopping together. We would go to the coffee shop together. We had I introduced him to all of my friends, which became his friends. And then we met Tori, who became our other best friend. And we all moved into a townhouse together. And needless to say, we were inseparable. We were always together. We did everything together. We shopped together. We cooked together. We cleaned together. Our place was always hopping. It was the life of the party. Even when Daniel didn't want it, at times, he was, at times he would want to stay home and read a book because that was Daniel. But to know Daniel was to love him. He was an amazing, amazing human being. He was loved by many, and we miss him. We will miss him. Even after I got out back in 1998, we remained friends. We remained best friends. We even hung out Miami, Tampa, St. Pete, Orlando. I even went to West Virginia to visit him. Everywhere. I mean, we were best friends. We always said, he was my brother from another mother, and he said the same thing about me. We were so close. I've met his entire family. Mary, his mom, his brother and sister, Jesse and Ricky, all his nephews and nieces. Even some of his high school best friends, Amy, and there was just so many. He was loved. Daniel was loved. We always remained in contact, and we loved each other. We were best friends. We could go for a few months without talking and then just pick up like we were just talking yesterday. That's the kind of relationship that we had. I will miss him. We had a trip planned. I bought a little travel trailer. We talked about going camping when he came back from his vacation. But sadly, God had different plans. But, I will always carry Daniel in my heart. He was an amazing, amazing soul. And as many of you know, if you knew him, to know him was to love him. Happy birthday in heaven. I know it's in a few days. I love you, my brother, and I will see you someday.
As evident by Angel's reflections and many others, Danny was a person who just cared immensely about everyone that was lucky enough to be in his circle. And for Danny, that care meant that he was always pouring his soul and his love into you and those you loved. And he never wanted anything in return. Nothing. And even when we offered, the answer was no. And that happened a couple of different times while in the short few years that we were privileged to know Danny. For one, when I was pregnant 2 years ago, and I have a 16-month-old baby now, Danny was one of the first people I wanted to invite to my baby shower, of course, because he was an honorary uncle to all of the kids in the department. Our kids were his kids. And Danny was sick the weekend of the baby shower, and he was devastated that he couldn't make it. He sent me a text and was just apologetic beyond words, sent a gif of a Stitch from Lilo and Stitch crying into the floor, and he just wanted so badly to be there for me and for our family. But he needed to take care of him, and I was like, Danny, it's okay. Like, also, can we bring you anything? Like, you are sick. Like, please let us bring you something. But Danny said, nope, I'm good. I just need to sleep. I just need rest. I'll be fine. And a couple of hours later, without even ringing the doorbell, we find books, a diaper changing station, and a high chair sitting at our door, all from Danny. And he said, I just wanted to drop off the gifts for you, even though I couldn't make it. I'm like, Danny, get back to bed. But that was not in Danny's blood. He wanted to be there for you no matter what.
And we had our cohort text, right? And so we were always trying to get him to let us come over, let him bring us, let us bring him food, let us do literally anything to help him. And not only did he say no, even when he wasn't at his best, he always was there for us. My kid was a COVID baby, so she was always sick. Our first year here, she was just 95% of the time she was sick, which meant 95% of the time I was sick. Until finally I ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. Danny was the one who was there as I was walking out of the hospital to pick me up. And I got in the car and he said, so she finally put you in the hospital, huh? And that was the way he was there, right? He wasn't gonna be serious about it. He was just gonna make sure that you knew that he was there for you and you were loved and you were cared for. And that's the Danny that we all, I think, know and miss the most.
And in both of our lives and in so many other people in the department, Danny was our kid's honorary uncle, but he was also so happy to tell us all about his nephews and nieces. And he texted us immediately when his newest little niece Lainey was born, newest little monkey and peanut in the family. And he was always just so excited to tell us about all of the amazing accomplishments because he was so proud and so caring about his family. And in many ways, also, Danny was our community person, as we've said, but oftentimes this resulted in just random texts and random gifts. That in this case was a random text on a Monday morning that said, group hug, good morning comrades, and good morning was an appropriate salutation no matter what time of the day it was. It could be 2 p.m., 10 p.m., good morning. And that was how Danny greeted you. And this particular morning, when he texted, Erica and I were both home with our kids, respective ages of, kindergarten for Erica, and my baby was 4 months old at this point. But Danny was so excited to always get updates on our kids, and we loved hearing the updates about his family in return.
So, for those of you not in academia, one of the things that we have to do is provide some sort of quantification of our successes. Danny, as we all know, had a ton of successes, and they weren't all quantifiable. A lot of them were, but boy did he hate having to quantify them. And the reason he hated it so much is because he didn't do anything that he did because he wanted to get awards. He didn't do anything he did because he wanted good performance reviews or because he wanted the accolades. Danny did everything he did for his people and for his purpose and for equity, like Betsy was saying. And so this thing that we do that I respect, and I think that it has is called the merit matrix. And it's a test of the merit matrix for all of those reasons, right? This isn't why I'm doing this. If I'm doing this, I'm not doing the important work and helping people, right? So this is a text from Danny. Oh, happy day. I'm not at the bottom of the merit distribution anymore. I may exceed standards. Oh, my Atlanta, how will I celebrate? I still hate the matrix. So for Danny, this was how he kind of diffused these feelings, right? It wasn't that he cared. There's no one who could care less whether they're at the bottom of the merit distribution or not. What he cared about was continuing to do the amazing work he's doing. Is it still me? Yeah, see, she's always more prepared than I am. So we want to give you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about that amazing work that he's doing. So we have a panel of his closest collaborators talking about his research. He was spotlighted in an AERA, which is the American Educational Research Association, our biggest research professional organization in this group. He was spotlighted in their newsletter, and they shared that. So this gives you kind of a hint of some of the amazing work he was doing. But we have all these people here who are actually working with them and doing that work with them. And so they're going to come up here and just kind of have a conversation, but I want to kind of orient you a little bit to who they are. Moraguez is Danny's mentor here at FSU, and someone he absolutely adored. I actually spent an entire night listening to Danny talk about how much he loved Moraguez and her work and who she is. And that's not an exaggeration. Sarah Dexter, his advisor, who he continues to collaborate with. When Danny introduced himself and his research in a seminar when we had all just started, his first slide was something like, this is a story about a boy and a girl. Danny was the boy, Sarah was the girl. Seychelle, who he started at the same time as us in a different department, and who he began collaborating with early, who I think they were kind of each other, they shared values and they were kind of each other's cheerleaders, right? Danny was a perfectionist with his research. He wanted to do it justice. He wanted to do the people that he was doing the research with justice. And so sometimes that meant just not getting things out because they weren't exactly as good as he knew they could be. And I think I saw Danny and Seychelle as the people who help push each other over the finish line a little bit and raise each other up. And Mario we hired while we were here. And Mario was this person who Danny was just so excited about when he accepted this position. He was literally dancing, in excitement. He was so happy to have Mario that when he came and visited to look at apartments and figure things out, Danny planned out this entire week. And he was like, Erica and Annie, you're coming to dinner on this day. I am taking Mario to these apartments on this day. He had a whole entire schedule for him. So these are all people who can speak much better to the amazing work Danny was doing than we can. And also, as they're talking, just so you all know, people who Danny just deeply, deeply loved. So I'd like to invite this research panel to come up.
so you can line up our names.
Okay, well, my name is Moraguez. I'm a professor in ELPS, and I had a privilege of serving as Danny's mentor. And, you know, we have spent so much time over lunch and dinners talking about his research, which is really out of his passion. His work is well known for equity-oriented leadership preparation, simulations, experiential learnings, and everything he did as a researcher was based on his own experience and his passion for helping the students who are helped by the teachers, who are helped by the lead. So that he knew that the critical role of school principals, and of course he was a teacher for many years in New York and in Taiwan, and his passion was evidence in every conversation we had. And so I was so glad that we have his former mentors from the University of Virginia, and my colleagues and the collaborators of his projects. And so I have prepared a couple of questions that I would like to ask you. The first, can each of you briefly describe the research projects you worked on with Danny?
I can start. So Danny came as a brand new graduate assistant wondering, what is research, you know? And I'm sure all of you, many of you are familiar with this experience of, you know, someone's walking in the door and they're interested in what you're doing, and you hope that they're interested in, you know, working with you on it. And so it was so sweet the way you described it as boy meets girl, because I was equally thrilled when Danny said, oh, simulations, oh, that sounds very interesting. And at the time, we had just begun planning for a national survey about how do educational leadership programs work to teach those in their programs. And one of the things that came from that was the thought ideas behind us putting together a continuum of methods that faculty use. And that turned into a publication. And afterwards, I got the sweetest thing, you know, what it's like to work with Danny. You wondered about that. Would you grab that mug on the floor behind you, Erica, right next to my chair? Thank you, Leah. He actually ordered these for all the authors. It's like a little tiny imprint of the article as it appears on the journal page. I've never seen something so adorable. And he got that for all of us because he wanted to memorialize his first article. And on the back it said, thank you. Teamwork makes the dream work. And to me, this pretty much sums up what it's like working with Danny. He was a great contributor. He wrote like a dream. And, you know, he jumped in wholeheartedly to what the team was doing and figured out, well, how can I make a contribution to it? What's my role? And he was so excited to be an author on the paper and, you know, to represent it with a gift to everybody on the team. Just kind of summed up like what he was like to work with.
So we were two brand new assistant professors. We just started talking about our research, and then he was like, oh, you do this, I do these simulations, and you're in instructional design, you do work on online teaching and learning, and you're looking at the interactions, then how we can make it work. So we had those like the conversations in informal ways in many settings. We had a college level faculty meeting, and then I was like, you know what, I did talk to Dean about these micro-credentials and the competencies. And then, you know what, I was doing research on competencies. Maybe we should do together. And the next day, he did schedule a meeting, and then we started working on that the state grant. So the grant got funded, and the whole thing that we were trying to do with this grant is I was working on social justice and equity related stuff related to technology, but I was looking at like what teachers think and what they perceive. But then it was like how we can take the action. Then he put me in a spot that like I was out of my comfort zone and thinking about how I can leverage my research to take action and help people.
So hey everyone again, my name is Mario. It's on the board, so I was like, so I was recruited to FSU by Danny, as Erica would have mentioned, and one of the main reasons for coming is it's rare that you find someone doing research in the same area that you were doing research in too. So for me, it was a bigger brother moment, and I'm not sure if Dean Andrew remember this when I said to him, Danny's like a bigger brother for me. So coming in and getting the opportunity to brainstorm my research with him, hear his thoughts as well, we immediately thought, hey, we have this data, let's do something about it. And we kind of started thinking about how can we prepare school leaders for equity and get at that critical consciousness. And the immediate overlap was pedagogy, which is kind of like how it is that we deliver our curricular practices to our students. And that led to us working on developing critical consciousness using equity-oriented pedagogy. And having Danny on that project, and someone mentioned that he was perfection or flaw?
Yeah.
That was him. So he pushed back like, hey, we need to make this clearer here. Hey, can we use an image here because the reviewers might love having this. So that was his job, they kind of pushing, scrutinizing what I've done and just kind of helping you to kind of make it very clear so readers can better understand and engage with it. And I think that's what I'll miss the most, which is having someone to challenge my thinking, but also think along with me to my research side.
Can we make sure we project our voice? Our friends on the live stream want to make sure they can hear you as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Do we want to, can we?
We try, it doesn't matter.
Okay, well, so we would like to also learn about how Danny first started as a graduate student, and then how, from your perspective as academic advisor, how his research interests evolved over time, and what stand out to you most about working with Danny as your PhD advisees and his dissertation research and contribution.
So Danny was very interested right away in thinking about how do we move the field from talking to action. That was a big focus of our lab of people where, we were thinking like simulations is a great learning tool so that people can practice and rehearse some of the things that are difficult about being a leader. And that applies to pretty much all the topics of leadership, but we had many conversations about how to address some of the things that make it difficult to call out where there's a lack of equity, where people are not included, where diversity is not appreciated, where there's not action being taken, can be very scary for individuals, and that simulations can provide a unique opportunity to sort of practice getting comfortable with that, imagining yourself having success, making it through, dealing with some of the sweat and the heart rate and becoming more comfortable. And this is what stands out to me about Danny's research is that he took up, my saying to him, like, we have been talking about this in our field for years, and UCA was at the University of Virginia, and we had all the historical materials. I was just describing this to Mario the other day. We started with simulations addressing change in society back in the 70s, and we're still doing a lot of talking about it. And so he joined with me and some other colleagues, Maggie Thornton and Davis Clement. We formed this little group of people that were really looking deeply at how can we use simulation to get people moving from talking about something to being comfortable to doing something. So there was and this showed up in his research for his dissertation, where he took a section of that cross-national survey and cross-sectional survey of university preparation programs and how they carry out their education, and looked specifically at how are they educating people for 4 different competences. And we, kind of went from that macro looking, what's happening in the field, to identify a gap, to he then looked at a micro way, how are 3 different faculty carrying out family and community education course, which at our university was where students were to learn about talking with their community, learning of their community, thinking about who are the students that they're serving. And he drew some very nice attention to the pedagogy that is used and how for each of these instructors it was different, and he called it talk pedagogy, talking about it, because each of those instructors had to work their way through it with a unique group of students, and they Danny showed some real insights into this needing to talk it through kind of approach, which hadn't really been discussed yet in the literature. And it sounds simple on the one hand, but it showed the way that you have to look very closely at how do we work with students in the classroom. And so not just simulations, but like looking at, and not just a national survey, but this set of case studies. And then Danny's work in progress, Seychelle was talking about, and we have another manuscript that will be coming out this year perhaps, where we were looking at, the kinds of outcomes from doing simulations. What did students say about their ethics and the evolution of them? So his work, was centered on this idea that he loved this acronym he made up, JEDI, which stood for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And then he started adding anti-racism, so JEDIer. He told me it was a new way to say it because there were some more letters put on it. So, one thing I want to share with all of you about his work, his dissertation work, is he got not just one, but 2 awards for his work. He got an award at the University of Virginia that was the best mixed methods study that year of all the graduates. And then he got a national award from the organization that was up there a moment ago, the Special Interest Group on Social Justice from AERA. They gave him the Dissertation of the Year award as well. And still, he was slow in perfecting those pieces and wanting to refine them. And I said, come on, Danny, you got 2 awards. Get it out. It's good. We all thought so. And no, there's still a little bit more. So, but he wrote like a dream. I mean, the other day, it seems like, just recently I saw something he wrote and I said, man, you're good. You're such a good writer. But maybe that's because he was so perfectionist about it. So that tells you a little bit about his work, that I encountered him.
Sure. I think so. Coming from a different field, our very first conversations started how we are going to define the terms, is what competence means in our field, and how we define critical consciousness. How we are defining critical awareness, and then we ended up saying, well, it's pedagogy. So that was our main thing when we first started the conversations, and. I think the PowerPoint presentations and the slide preparations was the thing with our collaboration as well. And when we had the project papers, they always had the PowerPoint presentations. This is where we are at. This is how our research questions evolved. And with the notes that his mentor told him, this is not feasible approach and we should take. So I think he has lots of he was very thankful for Himokiko having him and offering feedback for us. And then he was like, you do this, looking at the students' interactions in online environments. And we're doing things like simulations. What can we do with these interactions and how we can identify? And it took me at a different level because I was looking at what is happening at the class level. And then we now started talking about how we can look at how students establish their competencies during simulations and talking with an avatar. So his research took me, I'm still exploring interactions, but it took me out from my comfort zone, exploring new methodologies to make it more in-depth into how we can look at their competencies through this video during these simulations. And I think the biggest thing that I learned from Danny as a researcher is how to be organized. I think Danny is the most organized person that I know in my life. And after he's gone, I never had any trouble finding any single data source or any single information within our research folder. So, and I think another thing is, he said, we're not gonna play the game for the metrics. We are just gonna make the work that we want to do and we want to grow as a researcher and we want to create.
As I listen to Rachel and Sarah, I can't help but just think the overlap with all of our research interests. So he got interested in simulation, working with Sarah. He started working with Rachel about trying to kind of map how to develop critical consciousness. And on my end, we would work on what is it that we're doing at the principal preparation level to actually implement, to use what Sarah would have taught him to kind of get an understanding that Cecil's work will actually help to explain. And I can't help but think how we talk about preparing school leaders for equity and social justice, and we've been doing so for a few years, and we still don't have a clear understanding of how to do that or how to get there. And I think Danny's work promised to get us that closer, and it will set the field back, but I'm comforted knowing that we live in an era of AI. And even this morning I saw an article in a national newspaper saying now scholars are arguing about using simulations to prepare superintendents for the challenges that they're encountering. So there are conversations happening and the field will continue, and I'm happy Danny would have been a part of the setting or starting those conversations.
Thank you, Mario. I also wanted to mention that when I first invited him to serve as a reviewer for American Educational Research, when I took on the editor-in-chief role 2 years ago, he shared his review, and he was a perfectionist, so organized, and he was very long, and in every other thing, like whether it's a service, or advising, or teaching, he gave 120%. And you often need to tell him that, Danny, you don't need to do this too much. That's too much. But then he loved to do that. That's how passionate and so much care and the commitment that he showed in his work, whether it's research or teaching or advising or mentoring. And so, Kevin and Mario and I had the privilege of working with him in the same program of educational leadership. And as I hear everyone sharing, he knew how to make friends with every one of us. And it's amazing how, he probably didn't have time to sleep. But that's how much he was loving and caring, and that's how much he was loved. And I can imagine that, he's looking over from heaven and saying, oh my God, this is so many people. Is this all for me? So I think that we, as a colleague and friends of Danny, and in the same leadership program, I think in terms of research, it's that his passion and his really major contribution to the field, how he thought about his research in helping, preparing the future leaders, and thinking about the best way to do so. And he would, share how his students responded to the simulation. He would send us a link to the video, and then look the students, how she was so nervous, but then she came through, and then she will mentor the students, and then he has done that to many students. And so I think for him, research was not about metrics or publications or getting grants. It was about, really expressing himself in a way that how his care for the educator communities and the schools and everyone around him. And I think that we saw that, as we worked with him in his research and mentorings and advisings and really learning from him. So I would like to ask if anything that you would like to share, that what you would like to remember about Danny as a researcher in the years to come, or anything else you'd like to share?
I'll wrap up that I think the legacy that he has provided from his short period of time doing work independently, that he has made a mark talking about the use of simulations and really thinking about it in a field-wide way of, a virtual practicum, this phrase that we developed to talk about, yes, it's a simulation, but then it's what the instructor does with the simulation so that the learning really occurs, the debriefing and the connecting it to other things and the thinking, what am I going to do next time? So he has helped add to the understanding of what is that pedagogy, how do we do it in educational leadership programs. He also made another important contribution through the case studies, which I think he puts forward in that an instructional design model for that talk pedagogy. He illustrates what that might look like for planning and helps us think then what should we as faculty be attending to when we are trying to help develop Jedier in students. And finally, in that work, he also discussed the emotional labor of race pedagogy supporting faculty of color, the extra work that it is for them to carry that out. And a quote that stood out to me from his work that kind of sums up why it's important to pursue all of those things is social justice breathes meaning and life into our educational practices. And Danny really believed that. He thought that was at the heart of why we should be doing all of our work, and that's where his contributions have furthered our understanding.
I think through the research that they are still doing, I'm saying we, because even he created this Zotero file for me that now I don't need to look at the literature, it's not my field. So this year was meant to be our year to write our projects, and even he created that Zotero file, so I feel like he's always with me while writing, and I keep citing his work while writing. I know it hurts, but at the same time, it gives me encouragement to keep working on work that we are doing. And in terms of in our field, his contributions is thinking about a different context, because being an instructional design field, being an interdisciplinary field, and you can apply in different disciplines. And he gave us a super powerful context to move forward with Jedi research.
For scholars, it's going to be difficult. For scholars, it's going to be difficult talking about simulation without talking about Danny. So I'm reassured that, again, his name will continue. I'll continue as long as I'm living and as long as I'm doing research in preparing school leaders for equity. I'll continue to draw on his wisdom to support my research. But I think most important, what I would miss is that brother. It's having that venting body that I could just share whatever is happening with, and just knowing it's probably going to be a gift response back and forth, or even just calling him just about, let's say I'm having an issue and just kind of talking me through it, and it's not you, he's willing to jump online to help you to troubleshoot or fix. I remember even complaining to him once and my back was hurting. The next day, Danny had pills for me from South America that he bought because so I think that's what I'll miss the most, not having Danny around.
Thank you.
So as you all heard, Danny's research was exceptional. It was innovative, it was creative, it was community-centered, and he was just getting started. And so I'm grateful for the panel and to know that his legacy will live on through his research and the research of so many others. But his life and contributions as a professor were not just about research. They were also on everyday interactions that he had. And this is a quote from Katura Young, who's a doctoral candidate in our department. And I'll let you just read that for a moment. So Danny's way of connecting with people was through a brightness and a levity that he brought to every situation. And he brought that from his research to his teaching and advising. Oh my Lanta.
This is just a search in my texts, and it just kept going.
So another way that Danny tried to use his humor was by trying to give away his cat. And this is a text with our cohort when it also included Neha Miglani, who has since moved away. And it said, "It definitely won't be the same without you in the cohort. You, Nafis, and Noor that will be missed. Have you figured out how you will take Wilson with you?" And Erica said, "Danny, stop trying to offload your cat." And Neha responded, "Of course, Danny, please keep Wilson's passport and papers with him."
So this is the famous Wilson. Danny was never gonna offload Wilson. They were family, as much as he's family with anyone. Wilson was his guy. Wilson was a cat who he absolutely spoiled. He takes pictures really well, but this is a well-fed cat for his family here with Stacy. So he even, when he felt like he was away for too long, and by away for too long, I mean like working for the whole day, he would hire Wilson a play date. Like we had the same cat sitter, and he'd be like, "Mike's coming to play with Wilson today, so we're good for the day." So this is a very well-loved and well-fed cat. So we also, as part of this, used to kind of text back and forth. I'm very much a cat person. Annie is not, but she's got stuck with us. And so we often ended up finding ourselves texting cat memes back and forth.
Even as not really a cat person, I became very aware of the cat humor. And when I saw this on Twitter, I think, it's a chonk chart. So a very robust measure, quantitatively speaking, of the roundness of your cat. And it goes from smallest to largest, and the last one says, "Oh Lord, he coming." And I sent this to Danny and said, "Where would you rate Wilson?" And he said, "Wilson is at least a heckin' chomp." And then I said, "Enough of Floof to cuddle." And he's getting lots of cuddles still today. So as we transition to his approach to teaching and advising, the way he connected with students was at the core of everything that Danny did, well beyond what any normal person does. Finding babysitters for people, providing a level of support that is really more about family and meaning than just a transactional relationship. Holistic connections are how he connected with everyone that he met, and that included even before you were here at FSU. And we have our colleague and friend Eric Ludwig with us to read a remembrance from one of Danny's students.
Good afternoon, everyone. And again, thank you for being here. And thank you for the beautiful words that Erica and Annie have shared, as well as the panel and all of our colleagues and guests and friends and family. This is a tribute that one of Danny's PhD students, Mercy, who is in the crowd with us today, shared, and I'm going to read this. And then we'll have a short panel up here to talk about Danny's teaching and advising as well. And this starts, if I had the opportunity to speak to Dr. Moraguez one more time, I would simply say thank you. Thank you for believing in me when I was close to giving up. Thank you for offering hope when the journey ahead felt uncertain and overwhelming. When Dr. Stacy first introduced him as my faculty advisor, the title doctor felt intimidating. Yet I quickly learned he was far more than a title. From his very first email on March 5th, and the many that followed, often sharing possible funding opportunities and details about possible student life. Each message carried a quiet reassurance and a spark of hope. Meeting him in person at the Stone Building only confirmed what I sensed. His warmth and approachability made what I felt like a daunting journey suddenly seem possible. As a first-generation college student relocating to the United States, pursuing a PhD felt both daring and frightening. It is one thing to dream about doctoral studies. It is another to step into an unfamiliar world where every path feels uncertain. When I told my family I had been accepted, one of their first questions was, "Who do you know there? Where will you begin?" Without hesitation, I answered, "I know Dr. Moraguez." He became my first point of contact, my first source of reassurance, and my anchor in a completely new world and academic journey. He never judged. He listened patiently, responded kindly, and showed a deep commitment not only to his role as an advisor, but to the people he mentored. More than an academic guide, he was a quiet yet powerful force of empowerment. He saw potential in me before I fully saw it in myself and gently encouraged me to reach beyond what I thought possible. For students navigating new systems, cultures, and expectations, that belief is transformative. He fostered belonging in spaces that once felt out of reach and reminded me that challenges are stepping stones, that our stories do not define us. We are the ones who write them, one day at a time. With him, ELPS and LEARN became more than acronyms and programs. They felt like family. His care extended far beyond academics. He guided me through everything, from learning systems like Canvas to practical life details like which airport to fly into. Thanks to him, I avoided booking a flight to Miami and an exhausting bus journey with a child in tow. In moments like these, I realized his mentorship was rooted not just in professionalism, but in genuine humanity. Dr. Moraguez carried wisdom with humility and warmth. His sense of humor never faded, even in difficult moments. He explained department culture with patience, listened with empathy as I shared my early struggles and small victories, and supported me with quiet sincerity. The last time we spoke, he joked about being a regular visitor at the doctor. I never imagined that barely a week later, that lighthearted comment would feel so heavy and cold. His passing still feels unreal. His life reminds me that the power of relationships and education can never be underestimated, and that time is never guaranteed. His honesty, kindness, and unwavering care for students were extraordinary. I am profoundly grateful for the privilege of having had him as my academic advisor. Today I pay tribute to a remarkable scholar, a stellar mentor, and an exceptional human being. A legend has fallen asleep, and with him, it feels as though an entire library has gone up in flames. Yet his legacy lives on in the students he inspired, the lives he touched, and the courage he nurtured in people like me. To Dr. Moraguez's family, I extend my deepest gratitude and condolences. Thank you for sharing him with us. While you knew him as family, I knew him as a mentor, a guide, and a source of hope. His kindness shaped my life in ways words cannot fully express. I will always be grateful for the gift of his life and the legacy he leaves behind. Dr. Moraguez, thank you for your patience, your generosity, and your unwavering faith in your students. Your impact will continue to guide us long after your voice has gone quiet. Goodbye. Thank you, Mercy, for sharing those beautiful words. At this time, I would like to welcome up Dr. Stacy Rutledge, Dr. Kevin Forehand as his colleagues, and Odette Guillen Lopez and Leah Register as two of his advisees. And we'd like to talk a little bit about Danny's work as both teacher and advisor. As Erica and Annie said, I am Eric Ludwig. I'm an associate teaching professor in the department. I'm also the program director for our EDD program. And I taught with Danny for a number of years and also had a first class seat to see Danny's teaching and advising. As many of you shared and so beautifully articulated, Danny always made you, no matter who you were, feel like you were the only person in the world when at that moment you were with him. It was really a remarkable trait of his, And even as his colleague, I felt that way. He would always find things about you that were common points of connection. And Danny never did anything 100%. He did everything 150%. And I think his students can certainly attest to that. And sometimes I think as Moroko shared, you kind of had to reel him back in a little bit. But that's just the way that Danny was. So I could go on with an hour of stories about Danny, but I want to turn it over now. I have some questions here for the panel for them to kind of share their experiences working with Danny. So I'll start with kind of introductions. And as you're introducing yourself, questions here. As you're introducing yourselves, if you could just quickly explain kind of your relationship with Danny, and describe maybe a particular interaction, moment, experience that you had with Danny that kind of rises to the top for or makes you remember him in a particular way. So I'll start with Dr. Forehand.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Forehand. I work in the Educational Leadership and Administration program, which is the program that takes his research and put it into action. So we prepare school leaders for the next generation of leadership. And my probably most memorable interaction with Danny has to do with us going to Egypt. First and foremost, we were definitely afraid to ask because it was a two-week conference, and we didn't know if the department would say yes, because it was our first semester, first year there, and but we were like, okay, Dean Andrew had called us the number ones, so maybe he'll find a way to let us go. And so when we got there, I found out that I was definitely afraid of camels. It was a horrendous experience for me, near traumatic. And so Danny said, "You're really not going to get on the camel?" And I said, "No, I'm really not." He said, "Well, I'm not going to get on there either." And so everybody else in the whole cadre rode camels across the desert except me and Danny. And we sat there and we waited for about an hour and a half until they came back for a group picture. But that just speaks to like the brotherhood that Danny demonstrated when it came to me, and probably the sisterhood, brotherhood for our sisters in the cohort. He was just all inspiring, always joyfully bringing humor to any crisis moment, so that you didn't faint or pass out. He was going to make sure that you knew he was there and that he had your back.
So the first year that Danny was a faculty member, I was on sabbatical, and but we were redesigning a course together. And so when I was back in the spring, we would meet at Black Dog Cafe, for those of you who know it, and we would we were working on revising this course that I had developed. So he was busy kind of pushing me to think in different ways and change this course that I had developed. But it was a lovely experience. We did a nice job. And then this is something that hasn't really been said yet, was that we taught online the course. He taught one section, I taught the other. And his, I'm kind of like dry answers online, but he had a way of personalizing online that was insane. And I would look at what he would do and I would think, like, how do you do that? Because I didn't feel that good. I still to this day feel like it's a more, kind of professional situation. But he could make it professional and personal at the same time. So, yeah, it was a really beautiful thing to watch.
So Danny was my advisor, and I had had like a really rough situation, and so I'm in his office sobbing. And like, of course, he like walks me through everything. He's so positive. And before I leave, he asked me to scan a QR code. if you're interested, it's that one, if anyone's interested. Yeah, I'll give you a second. Sorry.
We're going full tech here, everybody.
That. There it is. I was waiting for the groan. Had to do a bit in Danny's honor. Like, that was his favorite thing. And something we had in common was like the running bit. And so the QR code links to Rickroll. Yeah. And I was like, this joke is like 10 years old. But of course it made me smile and like, you know, could continue on. He's just so goofy, something we have in common. I was in his policy to practice class. A couple of us are here. I don't know if y'all remember on Halloween. I dressed up. No one else was dressed up except for Danny. And it was either me or maybe Katura got to class just a little late. And so of course he had to hide and like jump out, and he's in like the nun costume, which is terrifying, and scared the crap out of us. That was just him.
My name is Odette Leilani, and I am a doctoral candidate in the Educational Leadership and Policy Studies, the EDD online, even though I live in Tallahassee. Dr. Moraguez was my major professor, mentor, and friend. One of the things that stood out most about working with Dr. Danny was how genuinely present he was. As my major professor, he didn't just guide my work, he invested in me as a scholar and as a person. Every meeting felt less like an advising session and more like a real conversation between two people who cared about the same things. We talked about New York City teaching, and Cuban food. He had a rare ability to take your ideas seriously while also making you laugh.
I'll share a quick story. Danny and I taught online together for a number of years, and a couple years ago we used Johnny Saldana's book in our class, and I had told Danny, I said, hey, why don't we send Johnny Saldana an email and see if he'll come talk to our class. And we did, and Johnny came and talked to our class, and I remember we were meeting on Zoom, and we let Johnny into the room, and so it's just me, Danny, and Johnny for about 15 minutes. And Danny was so like starstruck. He could barely get a word out of his mouth. And we said, Johnny, nice to meet you, and we're glad you're here. And Danny said, well, it's great to meet you, Dr. Saldana. And Johnny Saldana does not have a PhD. He actually has an MFA, and he was insistent on us not calling him doctor. And Danny did it just sort of out of habit a couple more times, and he had typed to me in the chat. He said, "Oh my God, I am so sorry. I feel so embarrassed." And that was who he was. But we had talked about it afterwards, and he, I think like 2 weeks later, he was like, "I can't believe I called him doctor." And I just have so many little stories like that of the way that he just was there. He made everything feel so real in a way that I struggle to capture, I think, in words. So thank you all for sharing. The next question I want to ask for Kevin and Stacy, and that is, how do you think working with Danny, teaching with him, seeing him advise, has kind of shaped or changed the way you think about your own teaching, your own advising with students?
So Danny and I kind of had a competition we both teach in the online program, and it's online asynchronous. And so we create the course and kind of let it roll, and then we grade and communicate with students on an ongoing basis, weekly mostly. And so when we would get feedback, or we would give feedback or grade work, we would have this kind of competition on who gave the nicest feedback. Because we understood the nature of teachers, and teachers having a long days, and sometimes they just can't meet deadlines, and so we never took off. Sorry, we never took off for late work.
It wasn't the Matrix stuff.
We never took off for late work, and so when students would have a situation or a crisis, I would say, well, Danny, this is the feedback I gave them, and I sent them a card. And he would say, well, yeah, I sent them a card and I made a phone call to see if they were okay. And so we would go back and forth on that, and just to show that Danny was all about finding innovative ways to reach people in an online asynchronous program. And I thought that that was one of the things that challenged me, and it's certainly one of the things that I would continue to pursue.
I think I spoke to this earlier, that it very much kind of seeing the way he connected, and it was right. It was all these different mechanisms, songs, gifts, videos. He just was always trying to figure out how to make that connection. And as someone who thinks a lot about that in my own research and in general, it was a really good learning moment for me.
Thank you. And I'll add to that, having worked with Danny, Odette, I think you touched on this beautifully, is that, we're busy people. We advise and teach a lot of students. And one thing I learned from Danny is that when students want to meet, it's not always because of something about a class or about their work, right? Sometimes they just want to talk to someone. And I learned from Danny that sometimes I learned to be a better listener, and to listen to students and oftentimes allow them to kind of lead those conversations, and that sometimes the best thing that they get out of those conversations isn't any sort of individual piece of advice or do this, don't do that, this piece of feedback. It's that they felt that they were heard and that someone was there to listen to them. And it might have very little to do with academics. It might be this thing in my life that is going on, and I need someone to talk to, and I feel like I can talk to you about that. And that's probably the thing that I'll take most away from having worked with Danny, and thinking about both teaching and advising, and that he was an incredible teacher, more than anything. For Leah and Odette, a similar question. How would you describe Danny's style, for lack of a better word, as both a teacher and an advisor? And kind of, you already said this a little bit, but what stood out to you?
Dr. Danny's advising was deeply personalized. He met you where you were, took time to understand how you thought, and shaped his guidance around that. What stood out most was his sincerity. He was honest with you, and you always knew he was in your corner. There isn't a time when Estela, another, one of his former advisees in my program, and I, when we talk about our work, there isn't a time that we don't mention how much we miss him. And I will tie two things that have already been said. In the qualitative data analysis class with Dr. Ludwig, I turned in an assignment on time, but it was missing things because I didn't want to turn it in late. So he sent me an email, and he says, here is what it needs. So, he gave me more time. And so it was like step 1 through 5, this is what it needs. Very simple. And so it took me about 3 months since October to because my next step where I'm at is the data analysis part. And I'm like, okay, I can go to Canvas, and I know that there are videos there that he made for us, and I'll watch those. And so I started watching those in January again, and reading the emails. And there was an email, data analysis assignment 3, where he says, here's what it needs. And I printed it out, and I told my roommate, I said, here it is. This is exactly what I need to do next in my dissertation. So I do have the email right here, and it's in front of my desk. And anytime I forget or I get overwhelmed, I see it, and I have to say that I'm watching the class videos, I'm rereading the emails to get me through the data analysis with him still present until graduation this summer.
Me and Danny were very similar. I would describe both of us as overly eager in some ways, very creative, and he was the best person for me to just kind of like word vomit at. And like half the time I'm figuring things out on my own, but he's like, yeah, that makes sense, like helping me get through there. And he introduced me to this concept of rubber ducking, which is a computer coder, but he like literally had a rubber duck on his desk. And when you would encounter problems, you would like literally out loud talk to this rubber duck to like get through your problems, because for the most part you can get through it for the most part of like, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, like, and so now I have like a rubber duck on my laptop, so he's always with me.
In kind of closing here, and thinking about Danny's teaching and advising, if you could describe Danny's approach to teaching and advising in a single word or a short phrase, and I know this is difficult, what would that be? We'll start with Kevin.
Bold and innovative. Bold and innovative. Danny and I were alike in trying to push boundaries when we can't, and so we were not afraid to, ask for forgiveness later. So that I would say definitely bold and innovative.
I'll go with thoughtful. Yeah, I think he was very thoughtful and intentional.
Loving. Love was at the center of everything we did.
Conexión verdadera, which is the true connection.
Thank you all. Appreciate your words. And at this time, I will turn it back over to Erica and Annie.
Thank you all so much for giving us just a little glimpse of what it was like to be with Danny in a physical or virtual classroom. And I'll give you just a moment to read this quote from Dr. Camden Reynolds, who is a student in the EDD program as well. Danny was an instructor who cared so much, and I found great joy in, I study mentorship as part of my research agenda, and Danny lived out everything that the research was telling me a mentor should do. And it's very hard to put into practice what you research for those of us in education, but Danny had an effortless way of being truly what it means to be an equity-minded mentor. And seemingly every time I passed his office, which is often, for those of you who know the ELPS suite, his office was right there when I came in the door. And he seemingly always had Canvas open, which is our learning platform where the online students engage, and for every class where students engage and turn in their assignments. He always had Canvas open and was looking at students' work, providing feedback, watching videos they made, and finding other ways to engage with students about the material they were learning. And sometimes when I passed by his office, I would poke fun at him, being like, Danny, why are you spending so much time in Canvas? What are you doing? But he was exactly the type of person that you wanted spending that much time in Canvas, because you knew that when he was providing feedback and engaging with students around the feedback he provided, that everyone was better for it. That time was not time that was wasted, exhausted. That was the time well spent, and with every interaction he had, he left a mark.
So I think this was largely covered by the teaching panel, but that's because for Danny, teaching was about connecting with people, just like everything else in his life. But before he started teaching here, he had a whole other life as a teacher in New York, in Taiwan, and one of his very closest friends shared a video with us where he's now in Hong Kong teaching after, my understanding is, Danny convinced him to move to Taiwan to teach with him. So this is his good friend, Joshua Joseph.
Hi, Joshua here, sending this message from Hong Kong. Where and how did I begin talking about Daniel Moraguez, or as many of us knew him, simply just Danny? Danny and I got assigned to student teach together in Washington Heights in 2006. And it quickly became apparent how enthusiastic and dedicated he was. A couple of days into student teaching, I saw him changing his mentor teacher's bulletin board, so I volunteered to do so too. A couple of days after that, he expressed interest in teaching lessons by himself. So I did so too, because Danny led by example and you have to follow. After student teaching, he went off to teach in the Bronx, I went off to teach in Queens, and we took our grad school courses in the evening. And throughout all of our assignments, all our group work, Danny always maintained a positive attitude. When many of us would complain about the assignments, not Danny. He led by example, and we followed. A few years later, Danny joined me at my school in Queens, and it was great working together with him again. And in 2012, he came up to me with this crazy idea. He said, hey, why don't we go teach abroad? And we could learn Mandarin. And I'm glad I said yes, because it changed my life. We went off to teach in Taiwan, and teaching with Danny was a different setting, but in many ways it was still very similar. Whenever there was an initiative, or whenever they needed help, or someone to volunteer to do something, the first hand up was Danny's. And the second hand up, strangely enough, was your own, because Danny was holding it. He'd volunteer both of you. I'd look to Danny and I'd say, I'd roll my eyes and he'd just say in his Danny voice, don't worry, bro, we got this. It's gonna be easy. And you'd agree, because you'd be crazy not to follow Danny. We took Mandarin classes once a week, and Danny always showed up, having completed his homework and then some. He showed up with tons of questions because he was just so dedicated. And then, for those of us that knew Danny, we're blessed and we're lucky. And I think Danny's greatest gift to all of us is that he led by example. His enthusiasm, his dedication, and it begs all of us to do the same. That's how we honor him. Every day, we try and follow his example, and we try to walk in his footsteps. I love you and I miss you.
So as you can see from Joshua's reflections, there was not much convincing that happened in moving to Taiwan, but it was more that Danny led by example, and he brought you along for the ride. And so we wanted to offer another quote here from one of our ELP, Therese Ayatarola, and I'll give you just a moment to read her reflection.
So we have a lot of these quotes that we've collected. I think we're talking about kind of putting them together to share. Also, some of them were just kind of perfect follow-ons to some of the things that people said. We got one last video from another friend who knew maybe a little bit of a wilder and crazier Danny than the rest of us knew, who got to know him in his 40s. This is Danny's friend, Evan.
Hello, my name is Evan Albaum, and I live in New York City. I met Danny while teaching in the Bronx. We first bonded over a shared sense of humor. He was in my classroom one day, probably to pick up his third grade class, but there was a first grader who was not the type to sit for more than a few seconds at a time. I encouraged the boy to stop squirming. KK, we'd like to see your face. And he sat down for a few seconds. Then he was on all fours, facing the other way, on all fours, with his tushy sticking up. And I said, KK, that's not the face we want to see. And Danny laughed so hard, and that's how our friendship began. We also bonded over passionate beliefs in good public education. He was like an education nerd. I asked him once to watch a few minutes of a video of my teaching that was used for training other music teachers, and he watched the whole lesson just because he liked it. On many nights he stayed till 8 p.m. with Marissa, working on lesson plans and prepping for the next day. He told me he talked about me as the guy who questioned his qualification as a trainer for principals when he had never been one himself. Of course, if anyone could do it, it's him. We bonded over being gay sports fans. We called Patrick Mahomes our Mahoney and giggled like schoolgirls. Danny took a job at a school in Queens the year my mom was dying, and he told Marissa to make sure I had food to eat during lunch, and she listened. He had that way with people. And he inspired me to change schools from the Bronx to Queens, which was a lifesaver for me. We went gay two-stepping in New York. We traveled together to Provincetown, where he met people who I'm still friends with, New Orleans, Maine, and China, and also China, Maine, where he spent a week at one of my extremely rustic cabins in the woods with Marissa's family and myself. At Mardi Gras, we went to this wild house party on a street named Desire with our host, Madame Terry. There were chickens and small animals running everywhere. We were handed a party drug, and suddenly the party was over, and just as suddenly the whole party was relocated to a dirt field with decked out shopping carts instead of floats, and a band playing on top of an old Piper truck. And then again, just as suddenly, a marching band arrived directly from Detroit and forcefully shoved us into a giant circle. That night just kept on getting weirder and wilder. We laughed so much that night, and again for years we tell him the stories. He had a special laugh that we all probably experienced, starting with an aspirating sound to express amusement and then graduating to deeper levels. We traveled to China for 3 weeks. Our first night in Shanghai, we went to the strangest gay club. It was just a large empty room with a quiet three-piece band and old male couples dancing in a circle. Then in a single moment, everyone suddenly disappeared. So we ran out the door and followed them to a park, passing a group of women doing Tai Chi as if they were performing for a late night non-existent audience. In Beijing, one of our tour guides called him well-fed in China. And he laughed so hard, nobody imagined a Westerner knew Chinese. We laughed when the little girl wanted to take his picture, and not mine, because she had never seen a Westerner. We laughed when people in China couldn't tell the difference between him and me. As for context, I'm 5'4" and not quite as well-fed as Danny. Hong Kong was another wild story that still makes me laugh. We traveled to 6 more cities. I don't remember the names because I relied on him to get us around. I figure I could always ask him, but now I can't. I am deeply hurt by his absence. Love you, Danny. You make a difference.
Evan mentioned Marissa, who is here today, and who Danny used to go visit in New York every year, or go travel with every year. And my kindergartner talks about filling your cup, like when someone kind of gives you all of the things that you need to be happy and to be who you are and be you. Marissa was the person who filled Danny's cup. Whenever he came back from seeing her, he was just this brighter, happier version of himself. And so, sorry to make you cry before you're about to come on here.
I plan to continue crying. met in the Bronx. So at the same school that Evan taught at, I taught at for 17 years until I transitioned to being a coach because Danny said I needed to. And he was right. So, I was like, I'm gonna read it because if I ramble, we'll be here till next week. This is a combination of almost 20 years of friendship. And yeah, I'm just gonna read it. Oh, Danny. What do I even say? I never imagined I would have to stand here and speak at a memorial for you. You all have always been so full of life. The world is truly missing out on your sunshine. We met a long time ago at PS 246 in the Bronx. You were a new teacher, and I had already been there about 6 years at that point. It didn't take long for you to become the best bilingual third grade teacher our school had ever seen. You were so dedicated to the success of your students. And around that time, I had just become a self-contained ESL teacher myself in a first grade classroom. I remember sharing some strategies to help you with your most struggling students, and you were so excited to just give them a go. We didn't talk that much after that, just in meetings, and especially when we worked with Fordham University on vocabulary acquisition in our own model classrooms. We worked hard trying to make sense of it all and figure out how to apply it in our teaching. That work eventually led you to presenting at the New York Sabe Convention, something that made us all so very proud. I'll never forget the day we literally walked into each other, and I mean literally walked into each other, in the hallway because we were both reading Harry Potter. That had come out the midnight before, and we just needed to finish. And then you found out that I had a coffee pot in my classroom. And from that moment on, it was magic. We were inseparable. And you've heard that from Angel, and you've heard that from a lot of his other friends. He was that kind of guy. He was always my left hand, always. Even from Taiwan. We worked late into the night, as you heard Evan said, we worked into 8 p.m. many a night, talking about strategies to support our students, about books, about life, and we drank way too much coffee. From then on, we did everything together, texted well into the night, sharing books, watching movies, and just enjoying each other's company. Danny was the easiest person to talk to and be around. He had a sharp tongue when he felt it was necessary, but he also gave the hugs that could stick all the broken pieces back together. You heard a lot today that to know him is to love him, and that could not be any more true. There's not a more loyal or caring person on this earth. My heart is forever broken. I miss your larger-than-life laugh and the sparkle in your eyes when you made a difference in a child's life. When they succeeded, you succeeded. I want to leave you with a quote that I've heard recently, and it goes like this. Do you know the difference between a good friend and a best friend? A good friend knows all your stories. A best friend helps you write them. My life has been forever changed. I still find myself wanting to call you to tell you the good, the bad, the ridiculous, and the wonderful. Vacations won't be the same. Family time isn't the same. Nothing feels quite right without you. To my partner in crime, I will miss you forever. Until we meet again, I love you, baby. Thank you.
So we want to wrap this up now with Danny's family who's here. I'd like to introduce Jassy, Javier, Giovanni, and Rick, who all I think we're gonna come up.
My name is Rick Moraguez. I'm Danny's older brother. I want to start by saying how profoundly grateful we are for this honoring of my brother. It means so much to us. Thank you for being here. I know some of you have traveled quite a distance for this, and I'm beyond grateful. I can see everyone here knows Danny well, whether it be through school, work, or from the many places he's been to. So I will share a couple of memories with you when we were young, growing up. We grew up in the 70s, 80s. Yes, we both drank from water hoses, stayed out all day with no communication, beepers, cell phones. We never had a car seat or used a seatbelt. And we were immune to secondhand smoke, thanks to our mom. I remember one instance, we're in the car, mom's driving, we're in the back playing around really loud, and all of a sudden she slams on the brakes. And we would all go this way, that way. Danny would always end up somewhere in the front and on the dashboard, something like that. One time my mom went to enroll Danny in the school I was attending. I remember the lady at the office going through the paperwork, and the minute she saw Danny's last name, she looked straight at my mom and said, "Is there any relationship?" And she says, "Yes, they're brothers." The lady looked straight at her and said, "Oh my God, I hope he's different." Yes, indeed, Danny was different. We were the odd couple. Danny was always, even little, was so neat, organized, focused. Everything had to be a certain way, not me. Danny loved school, loved studying, and participated in everything extra at school. Any extracurricular, he was there, not me. Even in his earlier years, I remember those award ceremonies they do, that the parents come and they call the kids to the front. Danny would go up and receive certificates. Danny would get a whole bunch. Not me. I remember one of those ceremonies really well. They would call your name, you go up and get your award. Danny's name kept being called over and over again. My mom looked at me and says, "When are they gonna call you?" I said they will. Needless to say, at the end, Danny left with a bunch of certificates, and I told my mom that the teacher forgot mine in her desk. I remember Danny said, "Bro, you're not getting anything?" And I'm like, I thought I was gonna get one for PE. I didn't. This next memory is one of Danny's favorites. We would talk about it and reminisce about the old times, and he would crack up. Danny's laugh, as you might know, was so contagious. I would hear him laugh, and I would just start laughing, not even knowing what he was laughing about. I'm in elementary school or middle school, and my mom was dropping us off at the car link. For some reason, she was mad at me and swinging. She was trying to hit me. I was skinny and fast, so I was dodging everything she was throwing at me. Nothing was landing. I see my teacher walk towards the car, and out of nowhere, my mom changed in a second. She went from mad trying to hit me to this nice, polite lady, lowers her window, and she's like, "Good morning, Miss Williams, how are you?" Like nothing had just happened. Yeah, me and Danny were different in many areas. The one common denominator is the incredible love and respect and that we have for one another. I love him so much, and although we didn't talk as much as I wanted to, or have seen him more times, he and I knew that we were there for each other. Sorry. Unconditionally, if one or the other had an issue. In closing, I would like to give a special thank you to Stacy and everyone else that came up here to share. I didn't know your names, but so appreciative. Thank you for that honor. Maritza, you are an angel walking amongst us. The definition of a true friend, and I love you. I want to believe that my brother can hear and see all of this. Danny, I love you so much. I miss you dearly. There's a big hole in my heart and an emptiness that I can't explain. I will never be whole. I will never be whole again till I see you again. I love you. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
I just have a short message that I wanted to share. My name is Javier. I'm Steve Danny's brother. I'm the youngest of 5. I like to point that out anytime I can. I mean, obviously, everyone here knows Danny. He was one of the most fun, positive people you could ever meet. He truly loved life. He didn't just pass through places, he experienced them. Whether he was traveling across the world or just stopping by your house, something memorable was going to happen. Danny loved to travel, and he wanted to see everything and meet everyone. Everywhere he went, he built real lasting friendships. He had a gift for connecting with people, and once you were in his life, you stayed there. He always remembered birthdays. He never missed sending a Christmas card. Always signed him and his cat Wilson. He would just check in just because. One of my favorite things that he would do is send us random packages. And we would get these packages in the mail and not know who it's from. And I would be like, you know, who the heck sent us a set of towels or a giant Halloween spider, you know? But eventually we would find out it was him. So even though he was across the world at times, he would still think of us. That was just him. Always creating a story, always making sure you had a memory to hold on to. Danny didn't just exist in our lives, he showed up. He made the calls, he sent the packages, he sent the messages. He created moments that turned into lifelong memories. We're gonna miss his laugh, his randomness, those messages, and those mystery packages. What he gave us doesn't end here. He showed us how to live fully, how to stay connected, and how to love people out loud. So if you want to honor Danny, don't wait to make the trip, don't wait to make the call, don't miss the chance to create a memory. Live big, love hard, and show up. That's how we keep him with us. We love you, Danny. Thank you.
I didn't prepare anything, but I just wanted to thank everybody so much that's here. During Danny's final days, he mentioned his friends and his colleagues many times, which really tells us that you all made an impression on him. So I want to thank you for that. You were very important to him. Danny was a person that was full of love, and he had a lot more love to give, but I'm very lucky, I feel very blessed and very lucky that we were able to meet him and have him share some of that love with us. Thank you so much, everybody, for this. This is amazing.
I wasn't going to say anything today,
I wanted to express how thankful we are for everything that you guys have done, but I was kind of letting my brothers take care of that. But after hearing all the things that everybody has to say, there's so many things that jumped up in my mind, and I'm Jessie, and I'm the oldest of the 5. And Danny loved to say that. Even to strangers at the hospital, he would make a point to say, she's my sister, the oldest. Everything that you guys have said and have shared of your experiences with him is what it felt like to grow up with him. The Danny that you all know is the Danny that we grew up with. The same character, the same laugh, the same thoughtfulness, the same everything. It was Danny as a little boy as well. He was so good that sometimes we didn't like him too much because he was the one that never got punished, never got, much less ever that swinging at my mom only went 2 ways. And we, but he was also the one that was barely 7 years old and would ask my mom if he thought that she was worried. He would say, Mom, why are you worried? Do you not have money to pay the rent? And it's like, what 7-year-old child thinks about those things? And those are the things that I remember as growing up, that he just grew up from that little boy to be that same way as a man. That laugh that we all talk about, that's what I'll miss the most. He and I shared from very young a love for scary movies. And of course, me being older, as I got older, I kind of got anxious during scary movies, and he had not reached that point. So he just thought it was very funny now that I couldn't watch these movies with him to scare me. That nun costume, I saw it quite a few times. And his laugh, like my brother says, you would hear him a mile away. You didn't know what he was laughing at, but you just had to laugh with him. He almost got us kicked out of the movies because of that one time. And it was a mystery movie. It was like, had nothing to do with laughter. It wasn't funny at all, but I don't know why he started laughing so hard. We almost got kicked out. There's so many things we could say about my brother. We could be here forever. He was truly special. And we know that as his siblings. But to see how many lives he touched and how many other people that were not related to him think the same and see the same that we saw in him is overwhelming and humbling. We can't express how grateful and thankful we are for everything that everybody has put together. I do want all of you to know that even in the hospital, when he already knew how sick he was, he made my sister and I take down and write this huge email because he was just always so worried that he was letting all of you down by not being there. And no matter how much we said, Daddy, this is about you now, everything will continue, everything's gonna be okay. He was just so concerned that he wasn't dropping the ball, like he said. He wanted to make sure that he could do whatever it was or let everybody know, how to proceed without him. And I can't say how grateful we are. I did want to say that my mom had every intention of coming, but at the end she's had some health issues, and as you can imagine, this has been devastating for her, and she couldn't make it. But she did want me to extend her gratitude as well. That's it. Thank you all on behalf of all of us, our whole family. And one last thing though, I do have to say, my brother was cutting it short with that story about the school. It's one of our favorite stories, I have to say the truth. When my brother was getting enrolled in middle school, Ricky was already there for a year. And when the lady who heard the last name turned around and said, please do not tell me you're related to Ricardo. Sorry, I had to say Ricardo. And my mom said, yes, that's his brother, but I promise you they're totally different. Again, thank you everyone.
Thank you all so much for being here with us today to celebrate Danny's legacy and all of the lives that he touched. And in true Danny fashion, he touched each one of our lives, but he didn't want to stop touching lives, even after he's not with us. And we are starting a fund in Danny's honor that will be used to support students in our department, just as Danny wished. And he always wanted to expand opportunities for the next generation, and this scholarship fund will be one concrete way that those opportunities can become financially accessible and realities for students, our incredibly talented future scholars and educators that will continue Danny's legacy. So we invite you to contribute in Danny's honor. Hopefully the QR code works, but the link is on this slide as well. The link is also on the confirmation email, the RSVP for this event. So if you miss it today, there's another opportunity to access that. And as we wrap up our remembrance and love for an incredible man that shaped all of our lives, we want to invite everyone to Proof Brewing, where we can all get together and tell our favorite stories about Danny, and in his words, raiseth us. We love you, Danny. We miss you deeply, and you'll always be with us.